Coming up on this episode, the Warriors admit a recent mistake with their latest signing. Plus, are Golden State and Stephen Curry sending a strong message to Giannis Antetokounmpo and other potential trade targets with the two-time MVP's return against the Houston Rockets on Sunday? Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Happy Easter Sunday to those of you in America. It's now Easter Monday here for me in Australia. It's also the return day of Stephen Curry. We finally get to see the two-time MVP back in action against the Houston Rockets on Sunday night. Well, we assume we're going to. I think he's still questionable for the game, but the fact he spoke yesterday in a press conference, everything seems to be trending in that direction. Could see him and Seth Curry on the floor together for the first time, but I think perhaps more exciting for Warrior fans is seeing Steph alongside Kristaps Porzingis for the first time. Of course, Steph has been out since January 30, which was essentially a week before the Porzingis trade happened. We know KP's strung a few weeks of pretty positive and good basketball together now, and it's going to be fantastic to see what those two can do, because Steph has very rarely had, if ever had, a guy at the center position who is this offensively skilled, who's just this big, obviously, as well. The Warriors have usually gone down the path of having defensive-minded big men alongside Steph. If you think about Andrew Bogut back in the day, Kevon Looney, even Draymond to some degree, I suppose, when he's played a myriad of small ball five basketball over recent years, Trace Jackson-Davis, even in the last couple of years. So the Warriors have usually gone to defensive-minded big men, and they've rarely had maybe DeMarcus Cousins, but even he was like coming off a torn Achilles when he played for the Warriors in the 18-19 season. That was probably the closest thing in terms of the ability to stretch the floor, to score at all three levels that Kristaps Porzingis can now provide alongside Steph. So really looking forward to that. But speaking of the center position, the Warriors have made another move there on Sunday, signing Charles Bassey to a 10-day contract. This comes in the aftermath of Omer Yurtseven's two 10-day contracts, which finished up after Thursday's loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Good reward for Charles Bassey, and I think it admits the Warriors have admitted a mistake here. Now, I don't know the full details of this, so I do want to preface by saying that there is a chance that when the Warriors made the initial Yurtseven move last month, that perhaps Bassey was, or the 10-day deal that he had with the Celtics was already lined up. But if you look at the reporting of it, the Yurtseven signing happened with Golden State, and then Bassey was signed to Boston a few hours later. It essentially happened on the same day, but it was a few hours later in terms of the reporting. And I never understood. It was very strange to me why the Warriors signed Yurtseven over Bassey. Now, this might sound like a completely pointless conversation, because I think that we're going to look at these two players. Yurtseven's time at the franchise is now over, and we're going to look at Charles Bassey, and we're going to think, why are we having this conversation? Like, neither of these guys are going to be long-term players for the Warriors. They are absolute end of the roster on 10-day contracts. It's a pointless conversation. But I do think there is like more of a moral and cultural element to this, which is important. And we can sit here and say, well, Charles Bassey, he's probably going to be on this 10-day contract, and then he's probably never going to play for the Warriors again. But I do think there is an importance in rewarding strong G League form with your affiliate. And that's why it never made sense to me. Like, if you line up Omer Yurtseven and Charles Bassey, like many of you, I'll be like, okay, cool. I don't care. Like, pick whoever, whatever. I don't care. Very similar players, not going to play a lot, not going to have long-term futures with the franchise, you wouldn't have thought. So whatever, right? I don't really care about that. What I do care about, again, is kind of this, I do think there should be a cultural element of, hey, if you provide really strong impact and put up big numbers and great performances in our G League program, then you should be rewarded for that. And even if Charles Bassey doesn't have a future with the Warriors, I am pleased that he does get this opportunity at the end of the regular season on a 10-day contract, because his numbers that he's put up with Santa Cruz this season deserve this opportunity with the Warriors. And we've seen it in previous years as well. Like, if you go back to last season, Kevin Knox got the opportunity, right? Had a pair of 10-day contracts, then was signed to a rest of season deal after really big numbers and strong performances for the Warriors in the G League. Braxton Key came to the Warriors on a 2-way contract, put up some big numbers in the G League, and then gets an opportunity converted to the main roster in time for the playoffs. We've seen it with Pat Spencer. We've seen Giannis Santos, obviously, being drafted 55th overall, coming and playing big minutes in the G League, and then finally getting his opportunity on the roster. And now, a few years later, here we are. Giannis Santos is one of the biggest positives for Golden State over the last few months. So I do think from that aspect, as much as, again, Charles Bassey is Charles Bassey at the end of the day, he's again not going to have necessarily a long-term future with the franchise. But I do think it's important to reward G League form in your G League affiliate team. And that's why I was bewildered, I suppose. I found it very strange that, hey, why are you taking... Omer Yurtseven has played... First of all, he's been out of the league longer than Bassey. Like, Bassey's been in the league. Just to give you a rundown on Charles Bassey, was drafted second-round pick from Philadelphia, played his first year with the 76ers, then was with the Spurs for 3 years. Then this season, Golden State, assuming he plays in a game, will be the fourth team he's played for this season, behind the Memphis Grizzlies. He was signed earlier in the season on a 10-day hardship contract, played, I think, 2 games for them. Then came to the Warriors in the G League, started putting up big numbers, got signed to a 10-day by the 76ers, his former team that initially drafted him. Only played 1 game and was on only 1 10-day contract, then came back to the Warriors in the G League again. And then got signed, as I recently just spoke about, got signed to a pair of 10-day contracts with the Boston Celtics immediately after the Warriors signed Yurtseven. Right. They basically happened side by side. And again, that's what I'm saying. If the Bassey deal was already lined up and the Warriors couldn't actually sign him because he was off to the Celtics, then okay, fair enough, whatever. But if he was available and the Warriors said, oh no, we're going to go down the Yurtseven route ahead of Bassey, that doesn't make any sense to me, again, because of the cultural aspect of, hey, let's just reward strong G League form. And you got a guy, Charles Bassey, in 17 games for the Santa Cruz Warriors this season has averaged 20.4 points, 11.7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 2.1 blocks, 61% shooting from the floor, and 40.5% from three-point range. Okay, at 6'11". Like, that's numbers that's worthy of an NBA opportunity, and particularly one whose center rotation has been injury ravaged for the Warriors over the last few weeks here, with Al Horford still dealing with his calf strain, Quinton Post still dealing with the foot issue. Those 2 guys are going to get reevaluated early next week. We know Porzingis doesn't play back-to-backs, and before this last 13, 14 game stretch, he was out for 6 games with the mystery illness and only played 1 of his first 11 games since joining Golden State. So they needed a big man, and I just found it weird that they signed Yurtseven, who'd been out of the league longer than Bassey, who wasn't in their organization by any means, had been playing overseas, came back, played 3 games with the Rio Grande Valley Vipers or whatever. One of them was big and notable, sure, but then the Warriors just used that as like, all right, come on board. I found it strange. Again, who cares? The season is kind of over from a team standpoint from the Warriors. Now we're really looking at individual players. Yurtseven didn't really get a whole lot of opportunity. He did have 17 points, 17, 8, and 4 and a block on Wednesday against the Spurs. That was his best performance. And then obviously 48 hours later, clearly with him, the Warriors were just like, we need a body and we're going to utilize him for as long as we can without actually giving him a main roster spot, essentially. Obviously, 10-day contract, you are on the main roster, but you're not on a standard contract for the rest of the season or anything. So the Warriors said, all right, 10-day contract, bang, 10-day contract, bang. You cannot sign a player to a third 10-day contract. You have to make a decision on them after that. And of course, the Warriors decide to move on. They go to another big man in Charles Bassey, who I think they should have gone to initially, because now you've got a situation with Bassey where it's like he's going to get a 10-day contract and the season's probably going to be over. Right? Like, the season is literally probably going to be over. Ideally, if you're only going to use these guys on 10 days and nothing more, you would have signed Bassey initially, had him for 20 days, the 2 10-day contracts. And then if you still decided he wasn't going to be a part of the main roster over the remainder of the season, then you move on from him as they did with Yurtseven and sign Yurtseven to, or someone else to a 10-day contract, right? They should have manipulated it so it was basically the opposite. But anyway, I'm complaining about something that, again, for you guys as fans might sound very minimal. Like, I understand that it's kind of a pointless conversation. But again, I do think there is something about rewarding strong G League form with your affiliate. And we've seen the development in some of these guys that are currently getting big opportunity with the Warriors, headlined by Giannis Santos. Really, like, that stems from the G League, right? And his development and time there. And so I do think it's important from that aspect. And I'm looking forward to seeing if Charles Bassey can get some opportunity. I think the Warriors still have one more back-to-back here. And with Post and Horford still on the sidelines, you'd expect that he would get an opportunity on one of these, at least one of these games moving forward here. Could he play even with, like we saw on Thursday against the Cavs? Steve Kerr went to just KP and Draymond as the centers and didn't give Yurtseven any opportunity. Would that change with Bassey? Probably not, but I wouldn't hate if it did as well. Like, why not give the guy a chance? Okay, you're locked into the 10th seed anyway. You might as well just actually see what you've got, giving this guy a 10-day contract. Different story, obviously, if Horford and Post were available. Again, we'll see what happens with their reevaluations in the coming days here. It sounds like they're close to me, those two guys, because why would you get reevaluated on a Saturday and then that reevaluation says we're going to reevaluate you in early next week in like 3 or 4 days? So they must be close to playing. We saw Horford getting some shots up yesterday. We also saw Jimmy Butler getting some corner threes up in some gyms somewhere. So that's positive signs, but plenty more to discuss in terms of Jimmy's rehab and stuff as we go along here and into the offseason and whatnot. But in terms of this Stephen Curry return that we are seeing on Sunday, just to transition into that, I'm recording this about 3 hours out from game time. By the time you guys are listening or watching this, you might have already watched. The game might be over. We might know what has happened with Steph, and fingers crossed. First and foremost, he gets through it and gets through unscathed, and there's no injury or anything like that, and looks pretty good. I do wonder if there's an element to this, because we've obviously been debating for weeks now whether Stephen Curry should actually return, whether it's worth the risk or not. What's the actual upside here for the Warriors when, again, they are seemingly locked into the 10th seed? They're going to have to win 2 playing games, and then voila, winning 2 playing games gets you the 8th seed and gives you a reward of having to play the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round. Okay, good luck. But there might be a off-court kind of front office aspect to this as well. And it really, in recent days, there's been a stark contrast that I've found really interesting between Steph coming back and the Warriors actually bringing Steph back into the mix with 5 games left in the regular season when, again, they're locked into the 10th seed. And contrasting that with the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo right now, whose future, again, faces real uncertainty and whose relationship with his franchise is quite clearly up in the air and deteriorating, you would suggest, to some degree, because they don't want him to play right now. They are prioritizing the lottery position. And you know what? It's a really interesting situation where I don't blame the Bucks. Like, Giannis has had some soft tissue injuries. Like, the last thing you want is for Giannis to come back and have a serious injury, right? And there is a slight, I will give the Bucks some credit to some degree. There is a slight difference between the two teams, given the Warriors are locked into the play-in tournament. They will play in the play-in tournament, which means they still have a chance to make the playoffs, as opposed to the Bucks, who are out of the 10 and cannot make it and cannot possibly mathematically make the playoffs, right? So there is quite a distinct difference there. But I do wonder whether the Warriors are sending a message, and Steph, even specifically him, are sending a message to Giannis and other potential targets this offseason, whether via trade or free agency, just in terms of the way they go about it. And so, for starters, the Warriors' treatment of Steph, the Warriors saying to Steph, if you want to come back, we're not going to stand in your way. Okay, we think that it wouldn't be the worst thing necessarily. Like, I'm sure Joe Lacob's looking at this and thinking, you know what, it wouldn't be the worst thing if we try our luck at the lottery. Okay, as much as could make the playoffs, I make a bit more money. Maybe we get 2 or 3 home games in the playoffs, kind of thing, and I can make some money out of that. You'd have to be looking at this and saying, "Hope." The last thing I want is Steph getting injured, and secondly, like, wouldn't mind trying the luck at the lottery again. Okay, and some in the front office would be thinking the exact same, right? They'd only be human to be thinking about that. But there's something to be said about the Warriors saying, "No, Steph, we understand you're 38 years old, but like you are the greatest player in franchise history, and almost like you've earned the right that if you want to come back, we're not going to stand in your way." And then there's also Steph, who could quite easily say, "Hey, I'm 38 years old. I've seen my best teammate in Jimmy Butler go down with a torn ACL. I've seen another key starter alongside me in Moses Moody go down with a torn patella tendon. Should I really be coming back? Like, we're locked into the 10th seed. The season's, as from a team standpoint, it's probably done. I'm 38 years old. I'm dealing now with this kind of, I don't want to call it a chronic knee injury, but in his press conference yesterday, it was kind of concerning, where it's like, this is kind of the new reality. There's nothing structurally wrong with my knee, but it's just like, it's going to flare up sometimes by the sound of it." That's basically what he was saying. So you wouldn't begrudge Steph from just packing it in and saying, "You know what, like, what's the point? Like, I'm not going to push myself to come back. Good luck to the boys. We'll see what happens, but I'm not going to play again this season." I wouldn't begrudge Steph of having that opinion, I suppose, and taking that stance. And at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily complain if the Warriors went to Steph and had a mature conversation and said, "Look, we think the season's done. We can actually finish 10th here and potentially have a crack in the lottery. We think for the bigger picture, that could be a real franchise turner for us. And it could be a big change for you, because suddenly if we were to get a top 4 pick or something like that, then you get probably a bona fide rotation player to play alongside with straight away, a potential future star, obviously, for the franchise, or we use that to go and get a big upgrade and get a star. Maybe it's for Giannis or something like that." And so I think there's an element here where it's like, Giannis, this is how we treat our superstar. You're being held back by your franchise right now. You want to play. This was yet the Giannis quote, right? That first appeared in The Athletic a few days ago. "For somebody to come and tell me not to play or not to compete, it's like a slap in the face. So I don't know where the relationship goes from there. I don't know what game is being played right here. I just don't want to be a part of it." And obviously, the the NBA, I should say, is investigating the situation and the kind of participation policy and whether Giannis should actually be playing for the Bucks right now, and if there's some wrongdoing on Milwaukee's side for not letting him play. But again, then you've got Steve Kerr, and this is a quote from Steve Kerr yesterday. "He's the greatest face of a franchise that I've ever seen. We owe it to our fans to give them the opportunity to watch Steph Curry play basketball this year, and Steph doesn't even think twice about that. That's what he wants. That's what we want. That's what our fans want. So we're going to do that." And I think, like, again, there is a huge contrast between those two situations. And with Giannis, obviously the number one priority, I suppose, for the Warriors on top of their trade wish list, that's going to be the case again this offseason. We know they pushed hard for him before the trade deadline, didn't get it done, went to Porzingis instead. But if Giannis becomes available again in the offseason, you know the Warriors are going to have a level of interest. And Giannis, being with only 1 year, one guaranteed year left on his contract, is going to have much more of a say in where he ultimately ends up, right, this offseason compared to what was the case before the deadline. And I do think something like this could play a role, right? Where Giannis looks at it and goes, "You know what? That's a leader right there in Steph Curry, who could quite easily sit out and essentially abandon his teammates because he's, 38 years old and dealing with a knee issue." Like, that's understandable if you wanted to do that. But you know what? It's a leader right there, coming back, 5 games left in the regular season after missing 27. That's a guy I want to play with. While simultaneously also looking at it and saying, look at how that franchise is treating their superstar, their franchise player, allowing him to come back at a time where, is it actually best for them? What's the upside for the team, for the franchise right now? There's very little upside, but you know what? Look at how they're treating their superstar player, giving him the opportunity to play. Look at how they're treating their fans. And even us as fans are sitting here wondering, should Steph really be playing? Not sure. This is kind of risky. But I'm also thinking, like, looking forward to this game. We get to see Steph Curry again. And all the stuff on social media is like, all right, let's put the risk and stuff aside. We get to watch Steph Curry play basketball again. And that's exciting and that's fun. And again, Giannis looks at that, I think. And other players look at that and say, this is how that team, that organization is treating their star player. That's how their star player is leading from the front. Okay. And that's how the star player is treating their fans in a really fantastic way by saying, you know what? I don't need to come back. Probably risky for me to come back, but I want to give myself to the game and I want to give myself to the fans. It's been an incredibly difficult period, dark period with a bunch of injuries, lost 22 of the last 33 games and fallen to the 10th seed. The season's basically done from its team standpoint. But if I can bring some joy, some excitement to the fan base over the next 5 games and then heading into the play-in tournament, then that's worth it. And I think, again, we can argue whether he should be doing this or not, but I think that plays a role in giving the fans some enjoyment and also kind of showcase, like, for the Warriors right now, like, you're trying to sell yourself. You're trying to sell yourself to a guy like Giannis to say, you should come here in the offseason. You should want to pursue a trade to us. Here's why. And one of those reasons why might be Steph Curry returning right now with 5 games left in the regular season. I actually think if there's a Giannis trade that happens, and it happens to the Warriors, I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not saying it's some huge factor that's going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go there because Steph came back 5 games left in the regular season. There are so many more important factors at play here for Giannis. Don't get me wrong. But it's just something that just gets in, I think does get into the mind, right? And does become some kind of potential influence. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but just let me know. I think it does become a minor factor here. I'm going to finish it up there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let me know your expectations for Steph's return, or if you are watching this on YouTube afterwards, let me know your reactions to the game and to Steph's return. Again, fingers crossed, hopefully everything goes okay. I'll be back later on, probably tomorrow, for a recap of the game. Again, looking forward to seeing Steph and KP back on the floor together. Obviously, if there's an update in the next hour that says Steph's actually not going to play in this game, then that'll be disappointing based on everything I've just said. But it is what it is at the end of the day. And I'm just looking forward to the Warriors hopefully breaking this couple game losing streak, I suppose, at home. Fingers crossed, again, that Steph can get through it. And the Warriors can hopefully get a win, right? Hopefully we see Seth and Steph play together as well. There's still reasons to watch, right? There are still reasons to watch. And good luck to Charles Bassey as well if he gets an opportunity. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at Pop252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter, Golden State with Mates on TikTok and Instagram as well. I'll see you guys in around 24 hours probably for a recap of Sunday's game.